Yo, what's up, guys? It's Andrew from Garagebandprofessional.com. Today I'm talking to you about limiting, talking to you about how to use the limiter, what is the limiter, and how do you use it in GarageBand. It's going to be a short video today because there's not a ton of things to say about it, but we'll jump into it. Make sure to check out the article at garagebandprofessional.com slash limiter hyphen GarageBand. As usual, I'll put the link in the video description. But anyway, I'm just going to explain what it is right away. A limiter essentially is a compressor with the ratio set extremely high. So if you don't know what a compressor is a piece of equipment that you use to, it acts as a volume control on your tracks. So what it does is that it increases the volume of the quiet sounds and it decreases the volume of the loud sounds. So it's almost like you have a little audio engineer that is in your music and he's turning down the volume where it needs to be turned down. Now, a compressor is actually a piece of equipment. It's actually a piece of analog equipment, but I mean, in today's day and age, because of the popularity of the digital audio workstation, people typically think of the compressor as a plug-in, and it is a plug-in too, but a plug-in is actually just based on the actual compressor that is a piece of equipment. But anyway, so to fully understand what a limiter is, I guess I have to explain the parameters of the compressor. So a compressor, usually we'll talk about the one in GarageBand. The compressor has 4 parameters in GarageBand. It has the threshold, it has the ratio, it has the attack, and then it has the output, or you could call it the makeup gain. So the threshold is the point at which the compressor actually starts working, and the ratio is how strong the compressor is working, and the attack is how quickly it grabs onto the signal. And the output acts as makeup volume. So after you've compressed the file and you've minimized how big it is, you can turn up the volume on total. If you understand if you understand the picture that I'm trying to make for you. So a limiter is really just a compressor where that ratio, how strong it's working, has been turned up super high. So what's happening there is that the limiter, as the name suggests, it's limiting the signal. It's creating a ceiling. It's creating a ceiling that way no signal can get through it. So typically a limiter will, anything, I forget what the exact number is. I think anything over a 10-1 ratio is considered limiting. Excuse me. So as you can see in the picture that I put here, you'll usually put the limiter at the very end of the signal chain. The signal chain just refers to the order of the plugins. So I have the EQ here. It's actually better to put the compressor first than the channel EQ, but we won't get into that. And then the limiter should be at the end. What else should I say about this? There's not a lot to say about it. If you know what a compressor is, you know what a limiter is. I guess I should just talk a little bit about the fact that, a lot of people, I think they overcompress because there's a lot of talk about compression, and audio engineers and people in the music production, they tend to think that they tend to, because they read on a forum somewhere that compression is good and you need to compress everything, they think that they should compress every single track, but you don't really have to do that. And from what I understand, at least, compression and limiting, they have what's called a multiplicative effect. I don't know how to say it, but so that means that rather than being additive, rather than having 5 plus 5, it's actually 5 times 5. So if you have let's say you have 3 compressors, or no, what's a better? I'll use the one that I use here. If you have one channel and the compressor is set to 10-1, the ratio, and then you have another one whose ratio is set to 5-1, the sum total of that compression is not 15.1, it's 51, because 10 is being multiplied by 5. So that's what's meant by a multiplicative effect, or however you say that word. I don't know how to say it. A genre that uses a lot of compression is EDM, and the reason why is because EDM is typically meant to be in your face right away throughout the entirety of the song. There's not a ton of dynamic range, although there is some, electronic music where there's a lot of dynamism and a lot of range and a lot of emotional variability. But when it comes to dance music, it's usually just pumping, and it has the same amount of tension at all times. So for that reason, there's a lot of compression, because as I said before, compression is increasing the loud of the quiet sounds and decreasing the volume of the loud sounds. So it's making everything more equal. And that's good for EDM, which has less range. Jazz music, on the other hand, it doesn't, you don't use as much compression, because people who are listening to jazz, they usually want as much dynamic range as they can possibly get. So I don't understand this point, but typically anything beyond 0 dB is distortion. So when you're using your limiter, you can just set it to the output level to negative 0.0 or negative 0.01, because anything that's going to go beyond 0 is going to be compression. So it's really not that difficult to set your limiter to the appropriate amount. What else should I talk here? So I guess we'll just get into the parameters right away. Here is the limiter in Garageband. I took a picture of it here. In Garageband, it only has two parameters. It has the gain and it has the output level. You can see here that it's negative 0.5 dB. That's putting quite the limit on your music. It'll be much better to put it at 0 or 0.1, as I just said, negative 0.1. And the gain, you can put it up by 1 to 2, 3 dB. You don't anything beyond that, and you're going to start noticing that the life is kind of being sucked out of the music, because you're increasing the gain on the total music, so you're increasing the volume, but that ceiling is still there. So whenever that signal hits the ceiling, it's going to sound like shit. It's going to sound bad, it's going to sound like it's sonically hitting a ceiling, which is what is happening, What else should I say here? There's other uses for the limiter. I don't use it for anything other than limiting, but some people use the limiter to shape dynamics in some way. I've never done that. I just use it as the end of the signal chain to make sure there's no distortion. And that's kind of what most people, I believe, use a limiter for. It's used as kind of an emergency volume control. It's used as a precaution. It's a way of kind of increasing the volume a little bit as a consequence, but making sure that there's no undesirable sounds in your music. There's no distortion or clipping. You know what? I think I'm probably going to call it in for today. I think that's all we can really say about the limiter. Make sure to check out the article at garagebandprofessional.com/limiter-garageband, because I really go into detail, and I use these funny little diagrams. But yeah, I think we're going to call it in, and I guess I'll talk to you in the next video.